What are you thinking? How do you feel?
This is my boomstick!
It's only a movie. Only a movie. Only a movie. Only a movie.
The massively successful Resident Evil game franchise debuted in the United States in 1996. The game was partially inspired by the works of zombie film legend, director George A. Romero. But, ironically, the 2002 Resident Evil movie that was based on the game would bring back zombie horror movies from the dead after decades of decreasing public interest. In 1997, Capcom hired George A. Romero to direct a live-action trailer for Resident Evil 2. Fans and critics were elated with the adaptation, and Romero was offered to write and direct a full film adaptation. In an article titled Resident Evil, Girls, Guns, and Ghouls producer Robert Kultzer revealed that he was concerned that Romero's script would earn an X rating, drastically limiting its reach to audiences and completely banning it from television. The friction surrounding the script may have been the final nail in the Godfather of Zombies' coffin, as the studio started turning their attention towards a young writer who was obsessed with playing the Resident Evil games, Paul W.S. Anderson. Anderson's enthusiasm for the Resident Evil games would be the catalyst for the film's success with audiences and gamers alike. Anderson kept the traits of the zombies in the film equal to how the zombie enemies in the game would act.
The rules of Romero's movies, were picked up very much by the video game. So we were sticking true to the rules of the video game. The universe of the video game is, it's very explicit. There are certain rules, there are certain things you have to obey. You can't have fast-moving zombies, for example. They've got to move at a certain pace.
The film Zombies walk slowly and carry items, differing itself to the zombies of Romero's Of the Dead franchise or from Fulci's films. Anderson also had the idea of making the film a prequel to the games, so that the experience would be new to both film viewers and gamers.
The idea I came up with was to do a prequel. Although the setting's familiar to people who know the game, the story isn't familiar. So whether you're a gamer or a non-gamer, you're starting from the same level. You don't know what the hell's going on.
Elements of the film would still feel familiar to fans of the series. The movie included the famous mansion setting to open the film, familiar game events like the Umbrella cargo train, fan-favorite enemies like the Lickers and Zombie Dogs were included and depicted honorably. Perhaps the most intelligent choice was creating new characters for the film, but made in the essence of the game's characters. For example, Anderson states he always saw Alice as a depiction of Jill Valentine.
Mila's not called Jill Valentine, but in her mind and in my mind, that's what she was playing. She was absolutely playing that kind of character.
This allowed the scriptwriters to work more freely, not focusing on previously established character details. The Red Queen is an entirely new character created for the film. Lasers create the image of a small girl whose visuals remind us of the video games of that time. One of the most iconic aspects of the first Resident Evil game is the locked perspective camera. Throughout the game, your camera is focused on a position and cannot be changed by player inputs. The film recreates these moments with overhead, locked camera shots. Additionally, the game features a loading animation of a door opening when entering a new room. Anderson specifically states,
there's that moment of anticipation, because you have no idea what's going to be in that room, whether it's going to be a load of undead that attack you, whether it's going to be something that's going to help you, and it's really very suspenseful.
And includes many shots of doors opening throughout the film. Details like this might be missed on someone who wasn't a fan of the game franchise. Michelle Rodriguez, a notable fan of gaming, had told her agent 2 years before this film was being made that if a Resident Evil game were ever to be made, she had to be in it. Likewise, Milla Jovovich was a fan of the series and preferred her young brother play it to kill zombies rather than people. I think this film suffers from unjust memories of poor CGI effects. Rewatching this film in 1080p on Blu-ray, I was pleasantly surprised by how beautiful this film can be. Furthermore, the special features revealed how many scenes that I had initially thought were CGI are actually created from practical effects. Maybe the best example of this is the laser room scene. I had memories of the laser grid turning Commander Shade into a pile of CGI meat chunks. But I would be pleasantly surprised at the special effects teams creating these chunks of flesh, fat, muscle, and bone propped up by skewers that the team would retract, causing the muscle puzzle to fall apart. The audience sees the body fall apart in the reflections of the room, an intentional decision to allow our minds to fill in the blanks of gore. The liquor creature may be the most infamous bad CGI effect of the movie. And yes, some scenes do look quite dated, but not nearly bad enough to be unwatchable. A full puppet was made for the liquor and was covered with necrotic flesh and muscle in order to interact with the actors directly. The scenes, including the puppet liquor, look quite nice and makes the creature a formidable final boss. Paul W.S. Anderson stated that fans of the game would always ask about the inclusion of the zombie dogs first.
When people discovered I was making the movie, fans would always be the first question they ask. Are the dogs in the film? Are the dogs in the film? So it became obvious the dogs had to be in the film.
And this film delivers the zombie dog creatures, making for fan favorite moments. Trained dogs were made up in zombie-esque makeup, of which they loved to devour around their mouths. Puppets were used for scenes like the dog jumping in the background or being kicked by Alice. But these dogs deserve their flowers, doing their own stunts like jumping through sugar glass to attack Alice. A trainer would command the dogs off-screen to viciously snarl and run towards their marks. In another example of well-aged effects, a scene has several dogs confront Alice, which was created by the special effects team, overlapping footage of 3 dogs. Watching the scene, you would never know the set didn't have this many actual dogs on set. Adding to the feel of authenticity was the decision to film on site in Germany. The film crew used World War II bunkers and the underground transit system beneath the Reichstag to create Umbrella's stone interior. Despite working in an unfinished train station, the crew created an elevated platform for their train effect. It's clear 2002's Resident Evil was carefully crafted and created by passionate people. Producer Jeremy Bolt played the role of a zombie several times. Stuntmen were set on fire over a dozen times to capture the perfect shot. Set designers moved 12 objects around a room continuously to create the illusion of a labyrinth of scientific objects. The cast went through combat and gun training to help make convincing kick-ass zombie fight scenes. The zombies themselves were mixes of practical and CGI effects, and their makeup was created by referencing real-life medical science about disease and mortuary. The film hired a crew of dancers to portray the zombies, so movements would look more fluid and in sync. And finally, the music for the film was created by the odd couple comprised of composer Marco Beltrami and controversial shock rock icon Marilyn Manson. For better or for worse, 2002's Resident Evil kickstarted a Hollywood frenzy to develop video games into full-length theatrical releases. Horror fans often debate the quality of the Resident Evil film franchise, but they can never take away how significant this movie was and still is to video game film adaptation history. You can say that the zombie movie craze of the 70s and 80s walked so that Resident Evil could stumble, and so the zombie genre as a whole could run.